Okay, thank you so much, Esme, for joining us for the Sling podcast. It's so
Thank you for
nice.
having
Yeah, it's really, I'm like, I think you're the first one who is in this spectrum. I've only spoken to anyone has this love for languages.
me. Hmm.
So I want to like start with maybe an introduction of yourself. Like I know you're a French teacher, you're an Oxford graduate, and so many things. So maybe give us like a brief introduction to our audience of who you are and what you do.
Okay. So I am, well, my journey and sort of passion for languages started really, really young. So I really enjoyed it, at school. I really enjoyed it kind of outside of school. And so I decided to pursue French at A level, and I went abroad. I went to and did work experience abroad in France, and then I decided to pursue an undergraduate degree at the University of Birmingham, where I majored in French. And then I also sort of delved into other languages like Spanish and Italian and Arabic, because you could sort of mix it up a little bit and do some credits in other languages. And then I spent a year abroad, studying at university in Paris, and I really, really enjoyed that. And I was really interested, especially when I was studying abroad, in translation work, as well as as well as the position of the linguist in terms of jobs that you can do, and employability. After I finished my undergraduate degree, I went on and did another sort of master's in like francophone literature, where I focused mainly on the literary works of Aziz Jabbar. And I then went and did a bit of work, sort of working as a freelance translator. But then I sort of wanted to have something sort of, as I was kind of being pushed in a sort of like pick a profession, I suppose. And so I went into language teaching, and I've worked as an MFL teacher for about 5 years within a secondary school settings. Um, and in the last sort of year or so, I've kind of I had an idea, coming out of like my maternity leave, that I really, really wanted to sort of look into other options for, as a linguist, that would allow me to work, in a different kind of way, and setting up aspiring linguists as a part of that, which is my business, which is offers translation and language tutoring services. And I've really, really enjoyed, using social media to interact with people, to help via, offer free resources, free help for youngsters who want to learn languages, but then also getting back into the swing of my languages on a more deeper level, which is, I think, what translation offers. Whereas secondary school teaching, can
Yeah.
be the same thing, keeping it simple for youngsters, really.
Yeah. What particularly made you choose French?
I think probably because it's, a language that's widely spoken in North Africa. So I traveled a lot in, Morocco and Tunisia, and these places. And, the origins of my family were North African. So I think there was perhaps just an attachment to French that was quite intrinsic. Um,
Mm.
and so I really wanted to learn that language. And then it's, a really widely spoken language. You know, English and French usually are the most
Yeah.
widely spoken languages, in terms of like big institutions in the world. And then I
Yeah.
just loved it. It was, to be honest, it was pretty intrinsic. I just really, really loved it.
All right. That's really cool. Well, what is their language? What's the mother tongue?
So my mother tongue at home, we would speak Arabic. But then obviously, when we started going to school and stuff like this, we would sort of mix with English a little bit. But I still speak Arabic a lot at home as well.
So how many languages do you actually speak fluently?
So I would say it'd be English, Arabic, and French. And
Mm.
then I did do a Spanish, like like courses in Spanish, and I'm about sort of intermediate level within Spanish or low intermediate. So I'm trying to sort of work that up in my sort of list of things to do. And then I did do a bit of Italian when I was at university as well. I really loved that, and I'd love to kind of go back and pick that up a bit more.
But is it quite hard to learn a language as you grow older, like compared to, when you were younger?
I think I was always really aware of that when I was a young person. Well, I was when I was a lot younger. I was always like, yeah, I have to learn now. I have to learn now, and that's why I was really adamant to learn French when I did, and I'm really, really happy about that. I think really, actually, your level of motivation is really important, as well as your consistency. Probably say those are more important skills and kind of, things to have than your age.
Totally, yeah. So I want to ask you, like, so now you like focus on teaching secondary school students. So is there like any challenges or any reward teaching, modern foreign languages to secondary school students specifically?
Well, there's a lot of rewards, and I think the primary reward is building a generation of young people who are really passionate about languages, because that's what happened to me when I was at school. I was really influenced by one of my teachers who was a brilliant linguist, and she really helped me enormously to be where I am today and kind of pursue this trajectory. And then obviously the other rewards is obviously doing something that you're really passionate about. I really love teaching French. I love the language, and I love sharing that with young people. I think there's some major challenges teaching, languages within school settings, but it depends on which school you're at. But in general, I think one of the big ones is lack of kind of consistency. A lot of the times, people want to see results straight away, and you don't necessarily get that with languages. And so that can make people frustrated, and then it can make them sort of go off and think, I'm not good at this, I'm not going to do it anymore. I think another one is just a general attitude of, well, everybody speaks English, so what's the point of doing this? And I think with that, when I was a student, when I was at school, they used to say that as well. But that didn't stop me. So we still see groups of students who are aware of that, but are still very passionate, still want to learn. And those are the ones that we need to reach out for and really kind of keep, within that passion. So I'd say those are the two really, really big challenges at the moment.
Do you have any strategy to ensure that, you have created this supportive and inclusive learning environment for the students of different backgrounds and learning ability?
Yeah. One of the things that I like to do is draw on, say, other kinds of languages. So, for example, say if you have students who come from, other places in the world, you try to draw on that, and say that, for example, it's easier for you to perhaps learn a language sometimes if you're already bilingual. And maybe make links between certain languages, maybe make links between the cultures, the countries that we're sort of dealing with, and that helps to kind of foster kind of inclusivity and make everybody sort of feel like, you're not just here to learn genders and verb conjugations. It's also another world that you're sort of exploring, and, drawing on what these other people in the class have, from their own backgrounds, can help you to kind of get everybody talking.
It's sort of like brings everyone together with this one mission of learning this common language, right? Even though as when it comes to different background.
Absolutely. That's very true. And it can get really nice conversations going. And I think a lot of the time, one of the big things about being a teacher, and I think the really, really good teachers are the ones that can really build relationships with students very quickly. And you can do that by being quite personal in a positive way and getting people that perhaps would be reluctant to speak, and then that can foster an interest, and they can actually be quite or more keen to pick up the language.
Right. So, like, as an aspiring linguist founder, what were some of your biggest challenges you faced when you started this language-related business, and how did you overcome them? You just started last year, right? Right.
I started this year, so I
Okay.
started so it hasn't been too
So
long
long.
actually. I started in about sort of March, April time. That's when I started.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, one of the other reasons that made me kind of set, this whole thing up is because I had seen in schools that as much as there were the challenges of, well, everybody speaks English, there's no point doing this. I could see clusters of students who really wanted to learn and really wanted to progress. And I think that there's a massive shortage in MFL teachers in this country. And those are the children who are missing out. So I wanted to sort of, as I knew that aspiring linguist, there would be a demand because I'd seen it in the classroom in a way. So I felt like I had to do it. And help people children who, for example, they don't have access to, say, tuition, they don't have access to maybe even a teacher, and they can get that help via, the social media platforms that Spiral Linguist has. So I just wanted to point that out that, in terms of the challenges, it's about facing that challenge is the dearth of MFL teachers and MFL tuition and trying to fill that gap. I think during the past few months, what I've seen is that I've seen that, it's really, really important to kind of do some really, really good, high quality content creation and marketing. These are skills that I've had to learn enormously because being a secondary teacher, linguist, you don't have a degree in marketing, you don't have this. So I've had to really learn that, and I'm still learning that. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges is more the marketing of the business side. It's more the business kind of aspect of the things and getting the word out there.
How's like the response so far from whatever you've tried? Like, are you able to reach out to your target audience?
Yes, I know where the target audiences are. I think that what needs to happen is providing really, really good, say, free content creation and kind of upping the marketing side of things to kind of get the word out a little bit more.
Mm. So like you're building a business on the side, but at the same time you're working full time at a school.
Currently, no. Currently, I'm not. No, I do because I came back from maternity leave. So before I was working as a full-time teacher, and then I went maternity leave, and then I came back and do part-time as a teacher, and I also work on this as my, big sort of venture, really.
Was this like one of the things that felt stepping outside of your comfort zone?
It did. And I have to say, I'd been wanting to do something like this for a very, very long time. I think probably even from my first year of teaching, which was like 5 years ago, I'd always wanted to do something that was language related, that had involved, social media perhaps, and that involved, like a business for myself. And I think that, when I kind of went on my maternity leave, I had more time to think and I had more time to sort of gather ideas together. And I thought, well, let's try this. So it was definitely coming out of my comfort zone. I think definitely the biggest thing that I had to do was kind of putting yourself out there, which I think a lot of people talk about because you're not used to, when you're a teacher, you're not used to kind of putting yourself out there that much. You don't have to. But with this, you do, to a certain extent.
Yeah. So I mean, language education is still quite a competitive field online. Do you think?
Yes, I think that with private tuition, everything is, you're not guaranteed clients, and I think one of the things within the tutoring private tuition field that I've heard people say is that when you work as a teacher, you're always guaranteed your students. You don't have to worry about that. Whereas with this, you do have to provide a good marketing strategy. a good program for your students so that they come to you and so that they recommend you and that you keep that flow of work.
So how do you plan on like differentiating yourself and your business to stand out from this crowd?
Mm. One of the things that Aspiring Linguist does, which I think is quite different from what I've seen from others, is that we offer a group tuition setting for languages with mainly speaking focus. Now, one of the things that happens in the classroom is that students don't really get a chance to speak that much in the target language. And so the group tuition that Aspiring Linguist offers will be targeted a lot on giving the students that opportunity to speak. It's also very kind of set out program. Now, sometimes students, they'll go to a tutor and they'll see the tutor maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks. But there's no targeted program every week, what you're going to be doing, what, independent work, you're all of this. Whereas Aspiring Linguist groups that all together and, kind of holds the student accountable for their kind of private tuition being on that program. So that's what I think allows Aspiring Linguists to really stand out.
So I feel like what I'm like understanding is that there's more focus when it's in a group setting, and maybe it's more effective in terms of their learning journey, the students' learning journey.
Absolutely. I think that one of the benefits actually of group tuition versus one-to-one tuition is that when you're in a group, you're kind of held accountable a little bit more because you have, other people there and they're holding you accountable. You don't want to look like, oh, I haven't done anything when so-and-so has done something. It can also lead and open the doors to more informative conversation, and asking questions, because people feel like after a while, when you get to know everybody, you kind of feel more relaxed to ask each other as well as a group.
So far, like, have you encountered any misconceptions of barriers in promoting the importance of language learning in your business?
Misconceptions.
Yeah.
I think one of the really, really big misconceptions about language learning is that, for example, you need to be taught by a native speaker in order to actually receive a really, really good standard of tuition or a really good standard of teaching. And that's a misconception, a complete misconception. If anything, actually, not being a native speaker allows you to sympathize more with your students who are also non-native. And also, for example, me, I have, master's level degree. I lived abroad. So while I'm not French, I still have a very, very high level in the language and I'm more than capable of teaching. But I think some people think, oh, you have to be like this, you have to be like that. And I think that's a massive misconception, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, like I have an idea. Sorry, go on.
I think another big misconception is perhaps people think, oh, click a finger and I can learn the language and be perfect and stuff like that. And I think that's a huge, perhaps a slight naivety and a big misconception about language learning. Language learning is almost like a lifelong journey. Even as a native speaker of the English language, there's probably going to be words that you don't know and that you're going to have to look up. See what I mean? And I think getting people to see things from that long-term perspective is really, really important. But, I don't know if you've heard the saying, you get it or you don't. Unfortunately, there are some things where you just kind of get it or you don't.
Like I was thinking, like, in your program, do you start it with some sort of mindset training so that, when students come to you, they have a realistic expectation on how fast they'll learn and that sort of thing,
I like to sort of go straight into it, but I do obviously make it very clear at the beginning that, this isn't a click your fingers. You need to put in the work. My Aspiring Linguist tuition is mainly targeted towards GCSE and A-level students. But, we look into accepting, say, people that want to return to the language, people who perhaps are slightly older, but then want to do a GCSE, want to do an A level, which is what sometimes happens. But the level of the programs are targeted at GCSE and A level, basically, and follow the syllabus there, because that's where I have my experience and feel, you know, very comfortable giving tuition within that. And, you know, students are held accountable, so they know that their mindset has to be very kind of focused throughout the tuition. I think also another thing when coming, you know, and understanding what, you know, and thinking about, oh, how long is the group tuition going to be? I think having, you know, very condensed kind of programs, like 8-week programs, 12-week programs, allows students to know, right, I'm going to knuckle down now and get this done within this time frame. And I think having that time frame really helps people to kind of think, right, I'm going to do this.
And also to feel motivated to like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Motivated as well.
So is it always between like 6 to 8 weeks roughly, like the way the program is designed for them?
Yeah, so I offer an 8-week one and a 12-week program.
Okay, so that's 2 types of program. Yeah, I feel like that kind of time frame will allow someone to do like, okay, within this time I'll finish some sort of goal and then I'll carry on and you'll at my own pace or something. But it's like there's no time frame. I myself would probably feel like, oh, there's no end to this.
Yeah, like there's no end. You know, yeah, they're coming, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I think that is the time frame for the private tuition, but students will always get access to the resources that we used on the program to help them. They will always get you access to, for example, you know, some support from myself even after, say, before their exam, if so required. So, you know, while it's an 8-week program, they still have access to a lot of the resources that Aspiring Linguist gives.
And like now I want to move towards more to like the business side of things. Where it has been a few months you have entered the entrepreneurship world. So how has it been for you? What are like the things you've learned so far in the digital marketing sector?
It's been a really steep learning curve. Like I said, when you know, being a teacher is a very it's a very traditional job. I mean, it's as old as the hills. It's very institutionalized. You know when your half-term holidays, you know this, you know the time, so on and so forth. And I think starting Aspiring Linguist, it got rid of all of that. And for a moment, I was like, oh, that's brilliant. I like it. You know, I like the fact that, you know, I can now sort of set things up my own way. But I've had to learn a lot of really new skills, which I wasn't aware of before, like marketing skills, content strategy skills. I've had to kind of understand a lot better how people network and so on and so forth. I tried to, you know, contact different kinds of people to try to get help and support for, you know, aspiring linguists. So it's an ongoing learning curve, but it's a very steep one. I think another big issue is also seeing like, okay, this is my vision, but how am I going to split up my goals to get to that in the end? And how can I manage my time? Because obviously you don't have all the time in the world to reach that particular goal. And I think those are ongoing issues that I'm working through.
Like, how do you actually, because you're a mother and, you know, you have other responsibilities and now you're growing this side hustle of yours, I'm sure it's like, how do you manage your personal time and business time? Like, do you have any tips or advice for also aspiring entrepreneurs to like doing it or facing the same thing like you?
That's a really, really good question, because one of the things that made me do this is because I saw how other mothers were doing it and how it was giving them, you know, if their businesses became successful, a lot more financial stability, which I thought was, you know, who wouldn't want that? Second of all, they were able to work more flexibly, which you don't necessarily get within structured employment. But in terms of me, it's still very much a work in progress. I like to get up early in the morning when it's very peaceful and quiet, and plan what I'm going to do during the week. I like to work around, say, my child's sleep schedule, things like that. Evenings, just any time where you can get to do something that's on this, then use it. But like I said, planning the time and managing your time and really setting it out like almost a list is really essential, because you just kind of end up forgetting.
That is so true. When I speak to a lot of clients or potential clients, what happens is that they will give me this excuse of that they don't have no time, or they will like buy products like courses or other coaching program, but they won't finish it or they won't execute it, and then they'll be like, "Oh, I have no time for it." And the whole essence of time is you have to carve out time for the things that is important to you that you want to focus on. It just doesn't happen. Like, you don't happen to do things, you plan to do things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it might be a very simple thing, but it's sometimes very hard to execute if it's not down there on like somewhere in your calendar or something. So
exactly. And I can see, I think that, before, when I was, even when I was working as a full-time teacher, I used to complain about time. I used to think, oh, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time. And like you said, you've got to make time, because whether you have children, whether you don't, whether you have a family, whether you're full-time, part-time, it doesn't matter. It's about your kind of mindset. I also did a couple of courses as well, like online, basically, for mindset, kind of coaching to try to change my mindset, my attitude towards money, my attitude towards like abundance, and how to think about business, because you don't kind of understand those things until you really think about, actually, maybe my thinking was wrong here. Maybe you're putting limits on yourself, and that you need to think a bit bigger, things like that. And I did a bit of work on that, and I like to kind of still kind of reflect on those things as well.
Yeah. I think one of the first thing I heard about this stuff when I started my journey was it starts with mindset. And if your mindset is on the right track, you'll probably sustain longer. Because as you say, the journey is up and down. And when it's down, it can be really down. Because when it starts out, you won't always see results straight away. It's just like learning language. It takes a lifelong journey. So you won't see the results straight away. And if you know that your mindset, you have trained your mindset in that abundant mindset that you mentioned, I feel like you'll be more motivated to put in the work even on the days you don't see results.
Absolutely. I think there's a link, like you just said, there between language learning and business development. Is you don't always see the results straight away, but you might reap the results later on.
Yeah, totally. So like currently we have a lot of technologies that also came up, like AI tools and stuff. Has it like, affected or impacted the learning experience for your business? Or have you tried out incorporating technology into your language program so far?
From when I was, from the start of my teacher training journey, we'd kind of tried to incorporate technology, because you can't avoid it now. Students are just always on children are always on their phones, and there's some really, really good software out there, particularly for vocabulary learning. So I always recommend, the use of things like Quizlets, Memrise. These are really brilliant resources for vocabulary learning. And so I like to incorporate it into the language learning. In terms of my use of AI tools, I think I saw one of your videos, which was about ChatGPT, and that was really helpful for me learning, about content strategy and marketing and things like this, and getting help with that. And so, for me, for the language learning business, I like to use AI tools like ChatGPT for that. But for the students, it's mainly vocabulary learning resources that I recommend as a form of technology incorporation.
How did you find using ChatGPT?
Um, I loved it. I loved it. So that
Totally
I
agree,
really,
right?
um, because, it just, like I said, when you become, we talk about time and the constraints of time, you need to kind of find strategies to make things quicker and more efficient and be more productive with your time. And I remember I attended another course, which I think was done by somebody online, which spoke more about ChatGPT and about how you can use social media to and kind of create content that will come out, like a day or two later and stuff like that, to sort of plan your time out a little bit more and kind of get more done within one space that will go over a week. And so that's been really, really good. And that was really, really good advice.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I know at a time where you can't really use this AI tools and stuff because yeah, it's basically you will kind of miss out in terms of the productivity, aspect of things. Because it really kind of like it's just starting from a blank thing. I have something on the page to brainstorm with and add my creativity in it. So yeah, there's still a lot of resistance in the marketing world, really. So I hope like people are able to take it positively into their business aspect.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So, so far, do you have like any lessons that you want to share so far, like in like the last few months, whatever you have experienced, and if you do have the lesson, how did they shape their approach to growing your business currently?
In terms of major lessons learnt, I think from the translation side of the business, I really gotten to grips with networking via LinkedIn. I think a lot of my marketing goes on LinkedIn for that side of the business. But I think that, it's very important if, as a freelance linguist and a translator, that you gain membership, via, say the Chartered Institute of Linguists, which I do have. And I really, really would recommend that because there's been moments where I've had clients, for example, where I've done a project and I didn't receive, the payment, for instance. And, being a member of that Chartered Institute of Linguists helped me to then get the money from the clients. And I think bringing in work as a chartered linguist, as a translator that has that membership, shows your clients that they're not just dealing with anybody, that they're dealing with somebody who has the credentials. And while in this country we don't have what they have in, say, Spain and other parts of the world, which is, that you're a chartered translator or sworn translator. But what we do have is we do have these memberships, which are really important to maintain professional credentials within that line. Now, in terms of, and so that's a big, big lesson that I learned is making sure that you have your membership and that you kind of stand up for yourself when say clients are, perhaps being delayed in payment and things like this, like really standing up for yourself, basically. I think another major lesson in terms of the aspiring linguist tuition side is probably just that is probably not necessarily, because obviously, as I said, with my marketing, it was a big skill that I really needed to learn. Don't be quick to offload that to other people who will come to you and say, I'm a marketing expert. I can do it all for you. Pay me this and I'll do it all for you. Don't be quick to do that. Learn the skills yourself, or try to at least. You might need a bit of help, but try to learn those skills yourself because long term it's more beneficial for you. And I think that, you'd be surprised at how many new things you can learn. Like I said, life is a lifelong journey of learning, isn't it? So don't be put off and think, well, my degree is in this and my degree is in that. No, you can learn new skills like marketing, content creation, social media type stuff. everybody's learning, and don't be afraid to put yourself out there and learn and challenge yourself, and don't offload it to others.
I totally agree on that. I feel like when you're starting out, you usually like they're limited in the funds, right? So I think that's the best time in your first few years to just gain as much of like knowledge and the skills you acquire. And obviously once I feel like you have a lots of clients and you really can't put your time into content creation or whatever that is, then always delegate those tasks. But I feel like there's so much joy when you're learning it yourself and then you see the good telling out of that. And also like being a CEO of your own business, you do need to know all of this versatile skills for yourself before delegating 100%.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I read a really good article where this lady, she'd set up a business and she'd actually learnt coding because they needed so much help with like the website and everything, and they couldn't afford to kind of offload that. So she literally learnt coding, which is something that I've been trying to do, and I'll hopefully get there. But it's been quite a challenge, really. But she learned that. And so when I heard her story, I was like, well, you've got to learn new things. Just because you didn't know it before doesn't mean you can't learn now. Like, look at her learning coding. She never had any coding experience before.
Yeah, and I think right now more than ever, it's so easy to learn things, and you don't even have to fully figure out everything yourself when you have tools like ChatGPT, which offer kind of code for you and solve things for you, right? So, because my husband's a software engineer, and half the time now he's using ChatGPT and other tools. So whenever he's stuck, he uses that to like figure out his code.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like we have less excuses to why we don't want to learn things right now in this age of technology.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah. So we're coming to the end of our podcast session. So before I end the session, I would like to, like for those who are inspired by your mission to spread the multiple languages and or would like to learn more to work with you, then you might share some details about how individuals can get involved in your, linguistic endeavors and benefit from your expertise.
So you can follow me on Instagram, Aspiring Linguist. I have a Facebook page as well, Aspiring Linguist. And then feel free to follow me on LinkedIn as well. And that incorporates both sides of the business, both the MFL tuition and the translation side at Esme on LinkedIn. And I'm, available via email, the linguist agency at gmail.com. And those are the best ways to sort of contact me. And, there'll be some really, really good content in the next few weeks in relation to the courses that we're starting via the Aspiring Linguist MFL tuition. Students, upcoming students, or people that want to return and complete qualifications like GCSEs and A-levels in French. And if you're not looking to do that, you can still follow and learn, new words, pronunciation, follow funny memes. I mean, I know social media, people who usually on social media, it's not just about, learning things. People are looking for a dopamine rush. So there's some funny memes that I try to put on there as well, and little videos and reels to try to kind of get people learning, even when they're scrolling on social media.
Yeah, simple. It was really engaging. I'll just get more on Instagram because I've been like following you as well. Really love the content you've posted so far. I'll put all the details in the show notes and in like information so they'll be able to find you. And so God, thank you so much for the conversation, taking us in and learning more about your first journey and the linguistic spectrum.